introduce Dr. Tamara, or is it Tamara? Dr. Harris.
Yes.
Yeah. Is it Tamara or Tamara? I've been debating.
Tamara.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Dr. Tamara Harris. She's a sports psychology consultant and a licensed professional counselor in Houston area. Specializes in helping athletes, business individuals, exercise enthusiasts, and non-sport performers to overcome obstacles and mental blocks, preventing them from reaching their full potential and helping them to achieve their unique goals for success. She's a member of several sports psychology and counseling associations. In addition to being a licensed professional counselor supervisor, Dr. Harris is a counselor educator teaching courses on ethics, social change and advocacy, and multicultural counseling, as well as serving as a mentor and academic advisor for students. And as if she's not busy already, Dr. Harris conducts corporate trainings and speaks at conferences and community events on topics related to diversity and inclusion, which includes social justice, equality for women, cultural diversity, and cultural competence in the workplace. Lastly, Dr. Harris is a mother of two beautiful girls. Her hobbies include working out, yoga, listening to music, cooking, and reading. She enjoys meditating and taking nature walks in the park. Please help me welcome Dr. Harris.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. Thank you. Is there an echo or is that me? Maybe not. Okay, we're good? Okay, we're good. Cindy, you make me sound good. You make me look good. Thank you so much. Well, thank you all for having me today. I'll go right into the PowerPoint presentation. I believe I can share my screen. Let's see if I can. And I can. And let's start from the beginning. Here we go. All right. All right, the culturally competent helping professionals. So that word helping professional or individuals like you, it's a broad term, those that are helping clients in any capacity. So I just chose to use that term. Okay. All right, let's see, there we go. All right, so I have a quote here. And just kind of, we'll share our thoughts. So this will be one of those workshops where, I kind of hear from you as well. And please be able, just jump in at any time. But we'll start off with a quote by Robert Allen. Cultural differences should not separate us from each other, but rather cultural diversity brings a collective strength that can benefit all of humanity. Kind of think about that quote for a couple seconds. Cultural differences should not separate us from each other, but rather cultural diversity brings us a collective strength that can benefit all of humanity. Words are powerful, right? So what does this quote mean to you? What resonates with you most from the words written in this quote?
We can all learn something from each other.
Yes. Despite of cultural differences, yes, we could all learn something from each other. Thank you. What else?
I think it's exciting to know that regardless of what cultures people come from, that we're all so similar.
Mm-hmm.
I used to live in a multicultural city and you would see people we had one hospital, there were 143 language translators, but everybody has the same kinds of feelings about their loved ones and what's happening to them and what their lives are like.
Yes, I agree. Thank you for that.
I think what resonates with me is that we are all very similar, but then what is different about us makes us special and is complementary to what's different with each other.
Mhm.
When I was in your class, that really, I learned a lot about, that I always thought everybody's a lot like me, but it's a good thing they're not,
Mhm.
because there are other contributions.
Yes, indeed. Yes. Very important points there. Anyone else? Thank you all. Okay.
Dr. Harris, it's LaShondria. How are you?
Hi, I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Chandria.
I think it helps us to focus on the fact that we can be different and it's okay, and it doesn't have to be divisive. So
Yes.
usually when people focus on differences, it's always focusing on those differences in a bad light, but it doesn't have to be that. It can respect the fact that we are different and that we have differences, but they can also be a strength because we can still come together despite those differences.
Yes, I love that. I love that. And as we talk about this quote, also just kind of as we go along, just think about your work with clients who are different than you are, right? And what you can learn from your clients that you work with on a daily basis. Okay. And so, by the way, please call me Tamara. So Tamara is great. Yes. All right, here we go. All right. So, and this is a question, and you have to think about the climate that we're living in right now, right? And so, what is so difficult about having difficult conversations on racial issues and social injustice? Think about your work with clients. Think about your daily interactions with others, what you see on the news, and just where you are in this present space. What's so difficult about having difficult conversations on racial issues and social injustice? These are some of the clients that you'll be working with or that you're working with. Whether they share their stories or experiences or not, we have to have these difficult conversations, right? So what makes them so difficult?
I think for one thing, you're speaking whenever you're a CASA, you're speaking on behalf of the whole organization. So it's a little bit different than being able to voice everything that you have to say.
Yeah.
And also just wanting to be, I think, kind in the process of it, and maybe just not having education on it.
Yeah. It's true. Yeah. Good point there. Anyone else?
I think also it's very difficult sometimes because there are so many untruths and false things
Yeah.
out there about other cultures or cultures that are different than our own. And because I know, I look back, I'm in my 70s, but I look back in times when I grew up and where I grew up and everything, and sad about not understanding what was happening with the other cultures in my area, and there was no intent.
Yeah.
It was just did not understand. And and I hate it when people say, well, it was what it was. Well, it was because we let it be. But I think that's very hard sometimes when you're talking with others to weed out the false information.
Thank you, Joy, for sharing that. Yes.
Welcome.
Anyone else? Yes, Joy. I definitely, I truly appreciate you sharing that, just a personal experience when it comes to these topics. And we all have to realize we all have, personal experiences that impact who we are today and what lens that we see out of, and our ability to really understand the worldview of the clients that we serve, right? So and that brings us into, Joy, multicultural lens. So what is in your cultural bag or baggage? What's a part of your baggage, right? So we all have cultural baggage. We all do. And so helping professionals must acknowledge their own cultural baggage. So one of the things that I heard Joy say was just kind of like, really how she grew up and how we grow up that those experiences, our cultural values and beliefs that are put upon us, that's what we carry. And so we all come with some type of cultural baggage. From the very beginning when we grew up, girls play with dolls, boys don't play with dolls, right? Those kind of things that our parents teach us, that we learn from our parents, that we learn in school. So we carry those. We carry these values and beliefs. So in our cultural baggage, we have personal beliefs, those that we have taken on from our parents and family, assumptions, that's part of our own cultural baggage. We all make assumptions. Biases, values, stereotypes, behaviors, we all have it. But here's the thing, you know, just being able to practice that self-awareness is key. So what lens are you looking out of? That's a question what we always have to ask ourselves. So are you looking out of your own lens, or are you looking out of your client's lens, and to be able to understand their worldview? And those are questions that we have to continue to ask ourselves. All right, so what's in your cultural bag? So we have an activity. So kind of think about these things, and you can share, you know, if you're comfortable in sharing. And this is where these conversations come in. So like we're talking, this is so important to have these types of conversations, right? So what's in your cultural bag? So you kind of think about this. How has your cultural background, educational level, professional background, and personal life experiences influence your attitude, values, behaviors, and biases about people who look different from you, right? Kind of think about that. So again, I'll read it again. How has your cultural background, education level, professional background, and personal life experiences influence your attitude, your values, your behaviors, and biases about people who look different or who are different from you?
I think we're very fortunate to be able to attend different trainings and webinars to expand, especially our attitudes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it's been positive with the experience I have, personally speaking. I grew up in a really small town, and so getting all of the information that I can get, I welcome it, and I look forward to embracing it all.
Yes. And that is, Morgan, a part of that cultural competence that we all should strive in that journey. It's an ongoing journey. So that learning piece and asking questions and having difficult conversations and you know, taking on trainings like this, it's an ongoing process to build that cultural competence when we are, you know, to be able to understand the worldview of the clients and people we serve. It is important to remember to meet the needs of the client. Self-awareness is vital. So you'll see that word self-awareness come up quite a bit. Helping professionals must take into account their client's racial and cultural identity. So who are they? And guess what? It's okay to ask. You're not expected to know everything, right? And I think that gets what some people get, you know, under some people, like, I got to know this, or you're not going to know. But here's the thing. The best person to teach you about who they are is your client, right? Is your client. So you can do all the reading and trainings, right, that are out there, and those are key to that cultural competence piece. But the person that you're serving, that's right in front of you, is your best teacher, right? So helping professionals must take into account, of course, again, the client's racial and cultural identity, who they are, and ask those questions in working with them. So that's your best tool at learning. We always have to look in the mirror. Who do you see, right? And sometimes that's very hard to do, right? Especially in this space that we're all in right now. Helping professionals must not allow their own personal worldviews, their biases and values, behaviors, religious backgrounds, and lack of cultural understanding to interfere with their ability to work with clients who are culturally different than they are, right? So here's that self-awareness piece again. Helping professionals should seek to learn, examine, and accept the worldview of the clients they serve. So although we're different, I heard this in the very beginning, it's about learning, right? It's about having those conversations. It's about putting yourselves in the client's shoes and being able just to say, okay, we are different and I accept that. I'm not going to impose my thoughts, my values, my beliefs, my morals onto you, right? Right? So that's important. Even not just our clients, just everyday interactions, our everyday interactions with people. So helping professionals must respect and accept these differences and become a student. And I heard that a couple times, a student in learning more about the worldview of groups of people that you are in interaction with every day, the groups of people that you serve, the population that you serve. That's how you're become more effective in working with people who are different than you. Here's another thing, become comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? So teaching multicultural counseling right now and these, topics on social justice and injustice and racism, it's a touchy topic. It's touchy. I have a student right now who's having some challenges with microaggressions, right? And it's come out in the discussion board. And so, that's something I had to address, and he still doesn't understand, right? And so it's uncomfortable for him to share his reflections because I'm seeing those emotions that are just coming out in the discussion board. And so, it's okay to be uncomfortable, but let's talk about it, right? And so my response to him and to the class was, hey, I know these topics are touchy, right? And so if they're touchy enough where it's just sparking emotions in you, and without being able to really have a open conversation, a respectful conversation about it, that means that there's some things that are going on there that you need to address. And so that means consultation, that means supervision, that may even mean counseling of some underlying issues that have not been resolved, right? And so that's key. So being able to recognize sources of discomfort when differences between you and your client, including you in the term. So when you're talking, you have that I, and then you're using the you word where I don't understand it. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? So those topics are racist, social injustice, power, white privilege, oppression, cultural beliefs. These are all difficult topics to talk about, right? They're challenging, but become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And how do you work through those things? So the journey to become culturally competent is an ongoing process. So it's not just a training like this or a talk like this. It's not just the book that you read or one multicultural class that you take, right? It's an ongoing process. And here's the thing, we have to be creative on how we're interacting with each other in this COVID space that we're in, right? And being safe, but any opportunity that you have to learn about a different culture, taking that opportunity, if it may be ordering a different type of food or like right now, Channel 13 is, they have different things that they do to highlight different cultures in the community, and it's some information that I'm learning this week on the Indian culture population. So it's really enriching my worldview of different cultures as well. So take those opportunities to be able to learn. Learn about current findings or issues related to mental health and the other topics that affect diverse populations. And so again, when the space that we're in, the topic of mental health and wellness is really important right now. But how are diverse populations, how do they view mental health? particularly among the African American community. That's one of the populations that, you know, as far as mental health, it's difficult for many people of color to seek counseling. That's part of the cultural literature. So understanding that is going to be key to understanding the client's worldview, especially about mental health. So that's very important. Actively seek out educational and social engagements to increase your cultural knowledge and cultural awareness. And that's very important to be able to do. How do you be able to put yourself in the client's shoes and understanding their worldview? So being a part of those things. And again, I believe I said before, it's okay not to know everything. Ask questions to learn more. And that's simply about, can you share a little bit more about whatever that is with me so that I can understand? Just a simple statement. And your clients and the people that you serve, that helps validate their story, their narrative. And guess what? That builds trust. That helps build trust. That helps build rapport. And it's okay to say, I just don't know. Or I did not know. Now you're helping me to understand you better or understand your culture. Have those conversations, right? Becoming cultural competent is a process, and I'll say switch up things. So if you're working with clients, helping professionals must incorporate culturally appropriate techniques, assessments, strategies, and approaches that are consistent with the life experience and cultural values of the diverse populations they serve. So again, that's knowing about the cultural differences and the cultural that your clients are coming in, knowing about their background as much as you can. And then incorporate those techniques and strategies that are appropriate for the population that you're serving. Another way to become cultural competent is become actively involved in local events, celebrations, social and political functions, and neighborhood groups and community. After COVID, when we're doing that face-to-face, but look at their opportunities now, such as this, virtual, in this virtual space. How can you be able to become actively involved in events such as this, right? So engage in conversations with individuals or group settings on how culture, stereotypes, prejudice, discrimination, power, privilege, etc., influences the therapeutic relationship or group process. So if you're working with a group of individuals, this is the information that's going to help you build that rapport and apply or provide effective services or meet the needs of your clients. All right, and so here, in working with populations that or individuals that are different from you in different populations, cultural challenges that impact clients, so understanding where the resistance comes from. All right, so and here's the thing, and this understanding the background kind of helps you. It helps you understand where there may be some issues of emotions or resistance in the therapeutic process, or just the communication breakdown. And so I added some things in here about group, but also just these key things just apply to individual work with clients as well. So just being aware of where our client may have lack of trust and why they have lack of trust, fear of being rejected and why there's a fear of being rejected, they're being rejected. There may be issues with lack of self-esteem and confidence. Just because they're not looking you in the eye does not mean they're not listening, right? Feeling like they're not enough or not good enough. Individuals that have personal experiences with oppression and social injustice. So understanding, having cultural knowledge and background on these issues that impact the clients that you serve. So here's another activity. Kind of just to think about, based on some things I've just shared and things you already know, what are some ways that you can create an inclusive, cultural, and accepting environment in your work with clients? So just think about the populations that you serve, and what are some ways that you can create a more inclusive, cultural, accepting environment?
Not an exact answer, but I think it is super important because especially in our line of work, a lot of these kids are removed from their home and the background that they know, and they might be placed and immersed in a whole different culture that is different from their own.
Yes.
So maybe some ways that we could create an inclusive would be to, I mean, just physically be inclusive, use that CFE, collaborative family engagement, to be able to get some of their background and their culture and their roots in with them, because they're being isolated on many different levels, and that's one of them.
Thank you for that.
If we have contact with the parents, which normally we do, in my situations, sometimes I think I would like to talk with maybe the grandparents, get some ideas of what is family tradition to them. What are things that they pass on or try to pass on to their children and would like their grandchildren to know about. And if the child is old enough to really, to understand, share some of that information with them, with the foster parents, and encourage the foster parents to maybe if there are little traditions or activities around holidays or whatever, encourage the foster parents to do some of those activities or create some of that environment so that the child doesn't feel like they're totally in another world.
Yes, yes, yes. Good points there, Joy.
And the parents don't always, of course, the parents we deal with, sometimes they don't know what planet they're on. But if you can talk to the grandparents or the great grandparents, because our parents are so young and our grandparents are so young, sometimes we have to go on back to a great grandparent.
Yeah.
And it's really amazing when you reach out to the older people and you talk, they're just a book of knowledge if you just listen. And sometimes that if the child we're dealing with, like I said, is old enough, it makes them feel, I think, more comfortable and understanding that, something that they're familiar with.
Right. Yes. And so that's so important, Joy, because they feel like they belong, right? They don't feel like they're other than, but a sense of belonging. And if the child is old enough, asking those questions of, about their background, what would they like, what type of clothes, part of what type of food do you eat, that you enjoy, right? And so asking those questions and being able to share with the parents, and that helps them to be able to, meet some of those cultural needs or understanding the child just a little bit better, right? That's
yes,
so
and even, you mentioned food or that, even like at Christmas time in a lot of the Hispanic cultures, tamales and, all of that. If we can get our foster families engaged in making, during that holiday, making just one day a day for Johnny or for whomever, and bring some of that through and tell him, grandmother told me you like this, or mother told me you, and it just helps them hold on to their background.
Yes, yes. And believe it or not, those type of traditions where they can really, the kids can kind of have some type of feel of belonging. It helps build that trust and rapport, but also it helps with behavior, right?
Yes.
You don't see a lot of the acting out. And so the things that they're used to, how can you incorporate that into their new learning environment, right?
Yes.
Everything from the type of clothes they enjoy, those traditions, the celebrations, the types of food they eat, their religious background, you know, those are all important. Those are all important.
And you know, I wonder sometimes, and I haven't even asked, it just kind of popped in my head. When we have girls that are foster kids and they turn, I believe it's 16,
Mhm.
how many of our foster parents, if they're not of Hispanic culture, have a quinceañera for the
Yeah,
child?
true.
You know, and
Yeah.
if you can involve the parents or the grandparents or
Mhm.
see that they have those experiences they would have if they were in a stable home.
Home
of their own.
environment. Mhm. Mhm. And that's so important, Joy, to their identity.
Right.
It's so important. And so that is just, that's key. Yeah, good point there. Anyone else? Okay. Ah, am I at the end already? I guess I am. Okay. All right, but before I close out, I want to read two just past statements to you. One is, don't be afraid to explore yourself as a racial, ethnic, and cultural being. An overwhelming number of mental health practitioners, and this is helping professionals, believe that they are good, decent, and moral people. Because most of us would not intentionally discriminate, we often find great difficulty in realizing that our belief systems and actions may have oppressed others, right? And the second thing is, understand that multicultural training requires more than book learning. In your journey to develop your cultural competence, it is necessary to supplement your intellectual development with experiential reality. So how can you, and think about the space that we're in right now with COVID, how can you create those opportunities? How can you be a part of those opportunities? And our world is virtual now. It's so much creativity in this virtual space that we live in that we can have, right? And so think about, you know, that this practice in addition to, you know, bringing those key things into this virtual space and, you know, still practicing safety and social distance and wearing our mask, and you're in the community, you know, how this may play a part in serving others in this challenging time, the families that you serve, right? And so this is just something to think about. All right, that is my presentation.
That was a wonderful presentation.
Thank
Thank you so much.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yes.
Yes, thank you.
It's eye-opening because I think we
Thank you.
spend a lot of time and we're thinking, you know, the children need to just acclimate to the new environment they're in and become part of it. And that's always kind of been a mindset, I think,
Yes.
possibly, you know, fit in, come fit in. But it's like, we've got to remember that that's not the healthy approach. Right?
Yes, it's true. That's
Yeah,
true.
Thank you.
Very important point there. Yes.
Does anybody have any questions or comments?
One thing I thought of during the presentation is we're talking about how to make, I guess, not in a way, how to make the kids feel more comfortable going into a new home or a new position. But another thing we can think of is if it's an adoption or foster to adopt, or even family that hasn't ever met this child that we found, like a distant aunt or something. Also how to let them know that, make the kids feel comfortable by immersing them in their home and their culture, to let them know, like, I want to include you in our family Christmas because you're family now, or like, don't be scared to tell the foster parents, like, keep things normal, just bring them into it and stuff like that. That was a thought that I had. Not necessarily bending to what the children need, but not bending at all to make the children feel like they're completely family.
Right.
That was just
Yeah, and that's a good point, Regina, because it's a two-way street, right? And so that's key to creating that healthy family environment and bonding, you know, and building trust. So yes, it's a two-way street. And so really learning about the foster parent or the families, the placement, and bringing that together, right, is so important. It's so important.
Great. One of the things that we always strive for is getting the kids to go back home if it's safe and possible. But we do have some that aren't possible. And imagine
Right.
being adopted at a young age, maybe as a baby. I listened to a speaker one time at Texas Casa and mentioned what an identity problem she had because she didn't know anything about her family or her background or culture or anything. And so people would ask her, what race are you? And she wouldn't know. And it was just such a painful and, just a traumatic thing for her. So these kids that we work with, they're already going through such trauma.
Yes. Yeah.
We don't want to add to that. We want to be able to provide a little bit of consistency there. And I also think that it's important to notice that other people may have biases. And we're here for the best interest of these children. So if we're seeing that maybe in the system that, the system is falling short for them, maybe because of biases, I think it's important that we educate ourselves so that we're able to speak up for them, because that's what we're here for, is to be in the best interest of the child. So I think it's super important. And I want to thank you so much for speaking to us. We really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I used to do some work with Child Protective Services, so I understand the population very well. It's just that self-awareness and what the work that you do is so important and key, but also just being able to create a space for the child to feel comfortable and helping the parents on the other side. And we're talking about cultural differences, and it's like I said, it's a two-way street. But just really being able to practice that self-awareness within first is key. It's key. And you have a better understanding of the worldview of the families and the placement, the families that you're working with, placing these children with.
I agree. Well, thank you so much. If we don't have any more questions, this will conclude our lunch. On just behalf of us, again, we really want to thank you for being here. And thank you, Cindy, for recommending her. This was a wonderful speaker, wonderful luncheon, and we just really appreciate it.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. And I was able to read all the chat. So thank you guys. And thank you for having me, and continue to stay safe and well and take good care. Practice good self-care too. Make sure you're doing that. All right. Take care. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.